Hi folks, welcome back to another episode of Run Yogi Diaries. This is your host, Santosh Shiva. Every week, I bring you conversations with people who are on a journey of well-being and fitness through endurance sports. I hope they spark some possibility in you, leave you with some tips, and perhaps inspire you to perspire. This episode is also available on leading podcast platforms if audio is your thing. Also, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing to it. Hit like if you like this video, and remember to leave your comments. Let us know if you took something away. In the house today, the incredible Gene Dykes, who is contrarian to the core. First, at the age of 73, he is considered to be the fastest marathon runner in his age group, with a personal marathon record of 2 hours, 54 minutes, 23 seconds. This is by far the fastest recorded time by a 70-plus-year-old individual. There is a backstory to why this isn't the official world record, and we'll get into that. He also has out-of-the-box rules for training, which is fascinating. We explore why he got started running late in his life, the secret of getting faster with age, his pursuit of the marathon and 50K world record for 70 plus age group, and then what's next. Let's dig in. Hey Gene, welcome to Run Yogi Diaries.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to talking about running for an hour.
Absolutely. I'm so stoked and excited to speak with you. Lots been written about you, but want to learn a few more things about you and how you do it. And but before that, let's have you maybe do a quick personal introduction, and then we'll jump in.
Okay. Well, yeah. My name's Gene Dykes. I've been around the world for 73 years now, and I currently live in Ballackinwood, Pennsylvania, with previous stops in Canton, Ohio, and Lehigh University, Cornell University, a little stint in the Army. And I've been living here near Philadelphia since 1993. I'm happily married, getting on, since 1982. You do the math. I can never remember. Two beautiful young daughters who live in Minneapolis and Minnesota. They both run as well. One daughter has done about 26 marathons, and
wow.
The other one's done one and is going to do a 50K with me this summer. So it's nothing more fun on my calendar than when I see races with my kids coming up.
That's so awesome. So nice to see your daughter's also running, and you're running with one of your daughters this year. That's so nice. It's so beautiful to see a father and daughter do a 50K together. It's very touching.
No, I forgot to mention my wife. My wife works real hard, and I'm retired, so she works, I play. It's a good deal.
Yeah. You live in a women empowered environment, and you're doing a great job, and they're doing a great job as well. That's awesome.
Yeah, I do the cooking and take care of the house and so on. So it's not like I just run.
Yeah, of course. Beautiful. That's so beautiful. So Gene, as I was jokingly telling you the other day when we met, that your name is so appropriate to what you do, because looks like you have good genes. To be running and doing what you do at 73, it's amazing, right? It's really amazing. So
well, they took their time kicking in, because I'm always telling people in college I was not a good runner. My coach hated me. He thought I was such an underachiever. I worked hard, but I just couldn't match my teammates, much less my opponents. I was pretty embarrassed by how I performed in college. So, but that's what maybe made me a good runner now, because I took a lot of time off from hard running because I knew I wasn't any good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, gene expression is a thing, right? And I'm not a geneticist or anything like that, but these are things you read about, and they talk about. Hey, sometimes your gene expresses later than later than never. So, well, but all this in jest, in good jest. I know you work very hard, and you're a very disciplined runner, and it just doesn't happen just like that. You didn't just wake up one day and. So yeah, we'll get into all of that. So. But before that, I know one of the pivotal moments or years of your life was 2018, and a lot has happened in that year, including your PR and sub-3 marathons, three of them, which is quite amazing. But want to get into a bit of a flashback here, right? Before we get into the main act. So tell us about how it all started. Why did you start running so late? First off, what got you doing that?
After college, it wasn't like I stopped running. I just stopped running in any way competitively. I would just go out and run for fun. Sometimes I was in shape, sometimes not. But I always considered myself, at least a jogger, if not a runner. And I had life list items I really wanted to do, and one of them was to do a marathon. So it was just a matter of when I was relatively in shape, just trying a little harder and getting in a few extra miles, and I did manage to finish it. I actually, a decade before, I didn't finish one. I had this foolish notion that you don't want to drink water during a marathon. That didn't end well. And my nutrition was bad in the Philadelphia Marathon in '97. And I bonked something terrible. But not only that, I went into it slightly injured, and I came out of it so injured that I couldn't run for 6 years. And
Wow.
Yeah, literally 6 years. Every year I would try, and my hamstring would hurt. I'd have to stop. And it wasn't until 6 years. And then, as it happens, it was just one of those happenstance things. Somebody invited me to play a golf round. He says, "Oh, by the way, we have a running group on weekends." I said, "Oh, I used to run a lot. Maybe I'll try and get in shape for that." And so I fell in with them, and they talked about racing all the time. Basically, I fell in with a bad crowd. Let's face it. And after a year or so of just running on weekends with them and doing a little training on my own during the week, I entered a couple races, and wow, it was really fun. I didn't even know there were races out there. There are 5Ks everywhere, 10Ks. Well, I knew there were marathons here and there, but I didn't know anything about the running community. But it was so much fun that I started entering more races, and just kind of a gradual thing. Kind of got hooked slowly.
Nice. So 97. Was that the first marathon, the Philadelphia one that you talked about? Was that your first one?
Yeah. Well, I actually, I'm a computer programmer, so that was my 0th marathon.
0th. Okay.
My first marathon was the New York City Marathon. That was the first marathon I ran as a runner, not as a jogger. And so I always count that as my first marathon.
And what year was that?
That would have been 2006.
Okay, so that's the gap you're talking about, 97, and then almost a 9-year gap before you did your first one.
Yeah. 6 years where I couldn't run at all, and then a couple of years building up, doing shorter races, and then the New York City Marathon.
Wow. So a lot of gold there, right? Because one is you didn't give up. You didn't give up, and you started. Some things went wrong. You hadn't done the right things, and then you came back through participating in shorter races. You kept running. For the folks who are listening to this, right? A lot of us just give up on ourselves. It's very easy. It's hey, I failed in the first marathon I attempted. Didn't feel good. Forget about running, right? But look at you. You came back and then you're thriving. So a lot of gold in that.
Yeah, it's important. I tell beginners that the worst pain is out of shape pain. And
Mm.
I think a lot of them go out on their first run and say, well, if it's this terrible now, just think how hard it'll be when I run faster. And of course, it's the exact opposite. The faster you get, the easier it is.
Mm.
All my marathons, as my times were dropping, got easier and easier. It's a great thing.
Yeah, and you also, and there's a lot of controversy around these word usage of these words, right? Jog and run, and I know you meant it in the right spirit, which is uh, more of something that you're doing easy, non-competitive. It's maybe jogging, but the moment you put on the gears and you're trying to, you know, outrun yourself and others, then it gets in realm of probably running. Would that be a fair statement for people who are listening to this?
Yeah, I think everybody might have a different take on it, but yeah, I think jogging is when you're just doing it casually, no goals. Just do it when it's fun. And running is if you have goals, there's a
Mm.
purpose to it. So
Yeah,
definitely before then, I was just a jogger, and now I'm a runner.
yeah, yeah. And anyone can be a runner. I mean, that's the whole point, right?
Sure.
It's just like you said. I like the way you described it. Having a goal makes a fundamental change in mindset, and that's really what you're calling out as a difference between jogging and running. So no, those are. I agree with that. I think that's a great distinction in what you're saying. So coming back to your journey itself, so you did the first marathon. We are in 2007, right? 2006,
6.
and how did that go? How did that first one go?
Okay. I was kind of I wasn't planning on. I was planning doing the Disney marathon a few months later as my first marathon, but I remember I said I entered a couple races. Well, the first road race I entered was a half marathon, and I ran fast enough that I didn't have to go through the lottery to get into New York City. So all my friends said, "Well, you've got to run the New York City Marathon with me." So, okay. And I don't know, about 5 weeks before the marathon, I got iliotibial syndrome, and I'd go out and run for 4 miles and feel fine, and then all of a sudden there would be this sharp pain. Uh, it's a pretty common injury. I didn't know what it was at the time, but fortunately somebody said, "Oh, that sounds like ITB, and here's how you fix it." And so I managed to fix it maybe a week and a half before the New York Marathon. So I went in not in the best of shape, but this time, because my friends knew a little bit about nutrition and hydration and pacing, I was able to sort of do it right. And I ran, I think, 3:43 something, which just qualified me for Boston by about a minute. Back then, if you met the qualifying time, you were in. And so from going to just going to run one marathon, I did New York, Disney, and Boston all in the space of 5 months. So I was kind of thrown into it all of a sudden. Oh, and the aftermath, just like the next bunch of marathons too, I could barely walk afterwards and the next day. I mean, I kid you not, it would take me 5 minutes to get out of my chair and walk to the restroom and back. It was just really awful. And don't even talk to me about going downstairs. But that's another thing. As you get better, those things go away.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen those videos of post marathon walks,
Yeah.
and it's usually
Yeah.
it really goes around the running circles. Yeah.
Yeah. But like everything, the better you get, the easier it goes. And recovery is another one of those things that comes faster and faster the more you do it. People are often amazed at how fast I can recover, but I know it's your body responds to training, and if you train and well enough, your body learns to recover faster. So
Yeah. So going back to the ITB, right? And you seem to have done something. But you went ahead and did the first New York Marathon. What about that? What about the ITB? Did it go away? Did you do something to take care of it?
It did go away. I went to New York, not sure that it was cured, but ITB is kind of strange. It presents itself in various ways. But in my case, it started hurting when I was at a certain pace.
Mm.
And if I slowed down or speeded up, it didn't hurt. So I was prepared to run the New York Marathon by alternating between a fast and a slow pace and staying away from the pace that hurt it. So I had a kind of a backup plan, but once I got past 5 or 6 miles, I knew it was gone, and I didn't worry about it after that.
Awesome. And it hasn't bothered you since? You've been okay?
I guess I had it again a year later. And it was a little more severe that time. It took me out for a couple of months. But in general, I've been fairly injury-free, I think, compared to most of my peers. Achilles tendonitis has been the worst, and usually I could trace it to kind of an injury and not a trauma injury as opposed to an overuse injury. So, and I think maybe you'll probably want to talk to me about some of my contrarian ideas. And I think I really attribute my lack of injuries to the fact that I don't stretch. When I stretched, I got injured. I stopped stretching, I didn't get injured. It's possible that that's not cause and effect, but
that's interesting.
I think it is.
We do need to talk about that at length. But what I want to call out is that people might look at you and say, "Hey, look at him, 73. He's breaking records. He just got good genes." I think that is a myth, right? And what we are talking about is you're someone who is like any one of us, has dealt with injuries. But I think it's the mindset that what I hear is a mindset of not giving up and being committed to your goal and really working with those constraints and then making it happen. And that's what I'm hearing. It's not like you've been gifted with some supernatural genes that that's making you do what you do. So I just thought I should call that out. So that's amazing.
Well, yes and no. I think that I've been with people who, like that first running group I talked about, and there were guys there, they ran, as much as I did, but I kept getting better, and they didn't, and I knew they were running as much as I was. Clearly, the level that you can attain is genetic, but there's a range there that training can really, really elevate, but that's being, world class shouldn't be the goal of everybody. You should always set your goals based on, what your limits are and finding out what they are.
Yeah.
That's always been my motivation, is how much better can I get? Not how many more people can I beat or what records. Really, I never was out to hold records. I just wanted to run faster and use records as goals.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's great. That's, again, another goal there. And coming back again to Boston. So you finished New York and then you kind of qualified for Boston, which must have been an amazing feeling. How was it for you?
Well, of course, I'd heard about it for a long time, and I didn't have much time to get used to the idea. And this was the 2007 Boston. Those of you who are steeped in Boston lore know that was the nor'easter year, where they were predicting just a really terrible snowstorm with 30, 40 mile an hour winds and sleet and freezing rain and snow and you name it. And it turned out that the storm kind of passed directly over the area. And, the center of the storm is much quieter than the fringes. And so it was only 20, 30 mile an hour winds, headwinds the whole way, and but not much in the way of snow and rain. So I learned about how weather can affect a race real quickly there. Actually, I have pretty good. I often say that race directors ought to hire me to run their races because good weather follows me wherever I go. Except for Boston. I think Boston weather is just been terrible every time I've been there. And I don't know, maybe this fall, maybe when it's being held in the fall instead of the spring, I'll finally catch a break.
Yeah, and how was it? How was it to how did you feel finishing the first Boston? People have very emotional stories about it. How did you feel about it?
Oh, well, I guess I have to disappoint you. I just do races. I have fun, and somehow, well, that was fun. I set my third PR in 3 marathons, and that's kind of was my goal going in. It was sort of the same thing in 2014, the year after the bombing, and everybody says, "Oh, you must have done that because of the bomb." No, I don't know. I always planned on running Boston this year, and but I'll never forget. The first year at Boston was the going through the Scream Tunnel there in Wellesley. It was something about the acoustics that day. You could hear it a half mile away, and it was like, I'm going to have to run through that, and it was a pretty amazing thing. That's something that'll last long times, that memory.
Yeah. And fast forward, so how many marathons did you eventually do since 2006 and until now?
Okay. I have a list of them. I have, between marathons and longer than marathons, ultras, I've done 135.
Wow.
Number 135 was 3 days ago. And number 136 will be 2 weeks from now. And right now, marathons just barely outnumber ultra marathons. But by the end of the year, I think they're going to be even because I'm doing more ultras than marathons this year. So it'll be about 70 each.
Yeah, amazing. So do you get surprised with this? I mean, what did you feel about the sudden response, the way your body was responding to your training? You seem to getting faster. Are you philosophical or are you religious? Did you say, hey, maybe God ordained me to be fast or something like that? How did you feel about it?
Well, there's absolutely one reason for that. I coached myself for 7 years and slowly improved. And then I hired a coach. And okay. Yeah. You could say I'm spiritual. I believe in my coach. What he did for me in just 5 months was just unbelievable. I went through so many new levels of fitness. I mean, going into that, I thought, hey, I'm an old guy. I have to, rest after hard workouts until my muscles aren't sore anymore. It'll be dangerous to run on sore muscles. And oh no, he'd give me 6 workouts a week, several of them really hard, and I'd go out for a hard workout with sore muscles, and turns out, boy, if you want to get really good, you can't wait for your muscles to be all ready to go. You got to hit them while they're down. So my coach is amazing. He always knows way better than I do what I can do. I would never assign myself such hard workouts, and if I did, I'd never come close to completing them. But he knows the right workouts, and the accountability is there. I'd rather die than have to tell my coach, "Hey, I couldn't do that workout," or at least I couldn't give it my best shot.
Yeah, that's amazing. A lot of folks. A lot of folks have a concern about hiring a coach, and I've not hired a coach in running, but I recently joined a group to learn swimming or optimize my swimming, and I have a coach there. And last weekend I didn't want to get up and go swim. I mean, my swimming is not good, so I was struggling to get certain techniques right. And I got up in the morning and I didn't want to go, and boom, a text comes from my coach saying, hey, we have this training today at 7:45. And you're right. I just didn't want to go explain to her that I'm feeling this way. I just went. And I agree, and to what you said, you do things, you push yourself a lot of times because your coach trusts you, and then you also don't want to go. You want to be accountable.
Yeah, the moral of the story is if you want to get good at anything, hire a coach. My brother-in-law was a serious rock climber who, of course, never had a coach. And when he heard me talking like that, he says, geez, maybe I should get a coach. And he said it really helped him to really do some things that he hadn't been able to do before.
Yeah.
If you're afraid of public speaking, get a coach. So on. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely, it makes sense, because I think a coach is able to see your blind spots, right? I mean, it's a third person looking at you objectively. It's devoid of your own baggage about yourself, and is looking at you from a commitment and a possibility point of view versus your own biases about yourself, right? And so, absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. So, fast forward, you got a coach, life started turning around, and I also get that you believe in your coach. We land in 2018, right? And which is I think a watershed year for you. I was reading where you broke three. 2006, you started at what, 345, 357, I'm assuming, in that range. And here you are, 9 years later, or more, you're breaking three. So tell us about that. How was it for you?
Yeah, it's kind of sneaked up on me. I remember when I got down, the best I could do on my own training was to run 3:16 on a wickedly fast course, Steamtown in Scranton, and when I only ran 3:29 at Toronto when I was hoping to break 3:16, that's when I knew I had to make a change. And so I hired the coach, and in just 5 months, I went to Boston, ran 3:09, and then 3:07 the next year at London, and then 3:04 at Twin Cities a year or two later. And it was then when I ran the 3:04 at Twin Cities, I started looking at websites, and I knew about Ed Whitlock's 2:53, and I knew that was never going to be 2:54. I said, like everybody else, I said that's a record that might get broken 300 years from now. But I found a website that had best marathons by year, like the best marathon by a 70-year-old or a 71-year-old or a 72-year-old. And fortunately, Ed Whitlock had a couple bad years in there. And so the world record for an age 70 marathoner was 3 hours and 23 seconds, I think. And I said, I'm only 4 minutes from that. Why don't I try that? That'll motivate my training. And it did. So for the next 2 years, I had in mind, beating that record. And I chose the Rotterdam Marathon as the one to try. It was kind of coincidence that it was just a few days after my birthday, and I just turned 70, because I knew I was still getting better. So I didn't really have to do it. I wasn't on my declining, and it happened. I ran 2:57, I think, and I guess it wasn't even until a little bit after that when I looked at 2:57 and said, wait a minute, now I'm only 4 minutes away from the age group record, the 2:54.48 by Ed Whitlock. I could train for that. And so that in 2018, instead of just doing a whole lot of random races, fun races or whatever it is I felt like running, I ran every USATF race that I could, and a lot of road racing. This, the list of things that I believe in that most people don't is that you've heard said so many times, you can only run 2 or 3 good marathons a year, right? You can't race all the time. I raced 40 races in 2018. Every weekend I raced. Every weekend I raced hard. And every weekend I got better. It's just totally wrong advice to tell people not to race as much as they can. Racing is how you really, things you can do in races you can't do when you're just training. It's there's just something that comes out. If you're a competitive person, I don't know, maybe that doesn't work for some people, but boy, it works for me. A gun goes off, and I'm a whole new person, and it stays with me until the finish. So so after Rotterdam, I wasn't going to try again until later in the year, but the Toronto Marathon people were real nice, gave me an invite to come and try and beat it there because that's where Ed Whitlock set his record. And well, my coach knows me better than I do, and except in that case, we were in perfect agreement. I'm almost in shape to do that, and that's how it turned out. I came up 23 seconds short. And the next day, I discovered something that would have done it for me if I had discovered it the day earlier. And I don't mind plugging it. They don't pay me or anything, but it's a Martin 360. It's a powder. You throw in some water and shake it up. I was able to get in, 2 months later at the Jacksonville Marathon, instead of 200 calories during the race, I was able to ingest 900 calories with absolutely no GI distress whatsoever. I would have been able to finish strong at Toronto if I had discovered that. So one of the big helps was new shoes going to Rotterdam, and, the Nike shoes, they're good for a couple minutes, no doubt about it. But Martin is even more important. I think that helps me run 3 minutes faster or so in a marathon. But so my backup for Toronto was, I decided to try the Jacksonville Marathon. I wrote the race director and said I'd like to set a world record there. Do you see any reason why I couldn't set a record there? He says, no, come on down. So that was all. The further I looked into it, but I already had a lot of things I had to do. And again, about recovery time is 2 weeks before the Jacksonville Marathon. I ran a 50K on Saturday and a hard marathon on Sunday and a 5K the following weekend. And then beat the world record by 25 seconds the next weekend. And boy, I remember crossing the finish line and I felt so good. I said, you know what this means? This means I get to run whatever race I feel like next year. I don't know. I can stop trying to beat that record and leak to other things. The last thing I expected was the response to that race that I got. It was, I thought, I'll post it on Facebook. A couple of people say, hey, good job. It was just, here it is almost 3 years later. And people like you are still giving me a call about it. It's just, it boggles my mind. It really does. And because, I'm out there having fun and, heck, I haven't broken much in the way of records in a couple of years now. That'll change in 2 weeks, but
Awesome.
It's certainly given me an opportunity to talk about, the important part of running, which is having so much fun. It's a little known fact that I do have a world record for having the most fun running. I think it's a 20,000 way tie with about every other runner around, but still, that's important. That's what you strive for.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and yeah, I mean. I could sense the emotion when you finished the Jacksonville Marathon. Must have been an amazing feeling. And so when you heard about the fact that they were not able to recognize that as a world record, was it very disappointing for you? How did you reconcile with that?
Well, I said the race director had said I could set a world record there, but it turned out, he didn't sanction his race, which, the course was certified and record eligible. Nobody doubts that, or that I ran it, but that's just the rules, and rules are rules. And I should have looked into it better. It's all my fault, but I really only had beating that record as motivation, and the fact that it isn't the record doesn't bother me a bit. I mean, maybe I was a little surprised to discover that that's how I felt, but it really is. I don't want to be a flash in the pan. If I'm good enough to set the record once, I ought to be able to do it again, and so I'm not worried. If I'm good enough, I'll get the record officially. Of course, it's been tough, in this COVID era. There aren't many races to try, but I've got a year and a half to go. So, and then, So,
terrific. Yep. Makes sense. And again, congratulations on that. And are you gonna give it a shot again anytime soon, this year or next year, or what's running in your mind?
Well, London is the probably the only real viable candidate. Because I'm kind of getting back into shape now. Then I do a whole bunch of stupid ultras again. Stupid. That's what people tell me. Oh, you're stupid to do those ultras. Why don't you concentrate on marathons? But I'm doing the Bigfoot 200 marathon in the middle of August, and then I'll devote all my time to training for London, which is early October. So that's a month and a half. Now you might think, how can you possibly set a world record with a month and a half training? But you have to realize that most training cycles for a marathon include building up your endurance. Well, I'll have run 100 and 200 mile races. Endurance is zero problem for me. It's all about turning some of that fitness into speed, and a month and a half ought to be plenty. So 50-50 that I'll be in shape to do it at London.
Yeah. And that's another thing I noticed about you, which is you seem to be very comfortable with these two very different worlds of running. There's the very hyper-competitive road racing, which you're definitely thriving on. But you seem to also be thriving on the trail racing scene, which is a little bit more, about experience and appreciating nature and higher consciousness, and it's a very different subculture, and you seem to be straddling both subcultures very well. How do you do that?
I guess I just decided that road racing was for competition and trail racing was for fun. I said when the starting goes off, I'm a new person. That mild-mannered guy all of a sudden just hates to be beaten when he's in the middle of a race. But in a trail race, heck, 3 days ago, I ran a 50K. I was probably, maybe fifth from last, but that's because, I had more important races coming up. I didn't care how I finished. It was just out there enjoying it. It was a mud fest. It had rained for 24 straight hours before the race. And who wants to get injured? But really, the thing is, I didn't feel motivated to beat anybody. Absolutely not. And I'll stop and take pictures. I'll stop and talk with the aid station. Things you just can't do in a road race, and all that makes it almost like a different sport. They're both running, but they're just really different attitudes, different methods. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. I think, again, some gold there, because for some people, we tend to kind of bracket these into two separate worlds and not necessarily wanting to leverage each other. I think what you're doing is probably a very smart thing to do for all of us as runners. Use the road racing to express your, competitive side of yourself, and which brings out certain aspects of oneself because I do feel that having goals and having wanting to beat your own personal goals sometimes brings the best in you in terms of training or response to training or getting stronger. And then there is the enjoyment part of it that you can derive from trail running, and also, as you said, endurance gets built while having fun.
Mhm.
So it's just a smart thing to do, according to me, rather than try and avoid one and just do the other. So great thinking there.
Mhm. Well, there's nothing harder than road training for. I think the hardest part of running is training for a marathon PR, for instance. I mean, the training, that's mentally what may set some runners apart from others, because the training is so hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it goes on for months, and you're working so hard, and the marathon is easier. You're really happy when marathon day comes, because you're trying to run within your capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Well, exactly to the limit of your capabilities. Whereas in training, you're stretching them, and that's really tough.
Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. And in a recent podcast of mine, my guest had talked about the central governor theory, which I think Tim Noakes talks about, and I did some research on it, all about brain training, and I found it very fascinating, because I found what I learned subsequently after I heard about it, was that your brain tends to want to protect you anytime it perceives threat or threat to your survival. It could be going up a hill, for example, and it tends to, your sympathetic nervous system tends to kick in. Your heart rate goes up. Your muscles are not getting enough blood flow, so you feel tired. You feel slowed down, and to your point, the training, being tough on yourself during training, basically helps with training your brain to say, hey, take it easy. I'm not in danger. I'm only just trying to go a little faster, kind of thing, right? Which I just found that whole theory very fascinating, and it made a lot of sense to me as a runner,
Mhm.
because there are counter theories out there saying, hey, when you're running, take it easy. You don't have to run hard, stuff like that. And I find that, and I've tried that. I've tried to go slower, but I find that the brain training doesn't happen when you go run slower in your training. You may build base, but you're not training your brain to embrace the discomfort during the race. Does that make sense?
Mhm. For some reason, it was reminding me of then how conflicted your brain might get during a 200-mile race.
Hmm.
I distinctly remember the fourth night at the Bigfoot 200. I was sleep deprived, obviously long since hit the wall, and was subsisting on fat and nutrition. Tired, cold, and so of course your mind is screaming at you, stop this. Your survival is at stake.
Hmm.
But your more conscious part of the brain says, well, yes, but I can't quit now. I'm in the middle of the wilderness. And so it's amazing how one part of the brain is screaming at you to stop, and the other part of your brain is saying, if you stop, you die. So it's there. Your brain can get into some pretty funny states
Yeah.
in running. It's funny. People ask me, "What's the runner's high like?" And I know I've never felt it. I don't know. Maybe I have, but I just uh, it's it doesn't appear to me like most descriptions of it. Uh, although uh, I think I could be a multimillionaire if I could learn how to stimulate adrenaline release, as a sort of a legal drug. I was doing a 200-mile race, and I got a phone call, and I had to dig the phone out of my backpack, and I was tired. I was barely ambling along. The race director says, "You missed the last aid station." I said, "No, I didn't." I said, "I'm with the sweeper here," and he says it wasn't there. He says, "Nope, it's there. You have to go back. And, and I've already had, I'm up against the cutoffs. And I have to backtrack for an hour to get to this phantom aid station. All of a sudden, I was off like it was the start of the race. I mean, a minute ago I couldn't walk. Next minute I'm running as if it was the start of the race, and that adrenaline rush lasted, about 2 hours. It was me. If I could call on that, in the last hour of a marathon, the records I'd set would be amazing. I don't know. Somehow I've got to just train my mind to fear for its life or something.
Yeah, well said. It comes back to the same thing, right? Brain training and being able to hack your brain to do what you want it to do. So yeah, makes sense. And now, good time to talk about your own, what you've developed as a kind of a personal philosophy to running and training, And I read about the fact that you say, hey, just run and, don't worry about anything else. And kind of a little contrarian to what the mainstream training industry is telling everybody to about running. So tell us a little bit about that. What's behind it? Give us a little bit of a backstory there.
Well, I guess my first hint was when I found that stretching didn't help me any. Mm-hmm. And maybe another time I discovered that taking electrolytes is a total waste of money. And hydration, I just found that all hydration advice was wrong. So I finally kind of got the idea that, there's a lot of conventional wisdom out there that just isn't right. But I want to preface this with saying that it's also the case that everybody is different. And what works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. So my advice isn't don't do this or do that or don't do that. It's find out what works for you and don't do it just because people tell you to. And I think that's what a lot of people do. Oh, people told me I should take electrolytes. I do. Mm-hmm. People told me I should stretch. So I do. But, try not doing them. See if it doesn't affect, if there's no effect whatsoever. So, find out what works for you. What works for me is no stretching, no flexibility, no cross training, no special diet, no electrolytes, no this, no that. It's, just run.
Yeah. So, that's an interesting point you make. Have you tried to collaborate with the scientific community or to say, hey, this is what's working for me, and is there a way to validate what's going on here? Because, like, especially about mobility and strength training and cross training, there's evidence that it helps, right? Because it helps in recovery, it helps in as you get older, your muscle mass is deteriorating. These are scientific, these theories out there which are backed by some studies, and that's what's kind of driving some of the practices in the industry. I was wondering, would you think about doing something like that, just to, because you seem to be something's working here?
Well, I did do one, kind of fitness test where they tried to find out what my lactate threshold was and all that. And unfortunately, it required me to be on a treadmill for the first time in my life. And, that's way worse than anything I could subject myself to. You get on a treadmill and you do a lactate threshold run. It's the opposite of a race, where you reach the end of the race and it's success, it's over. But, in something like that, you have to stay on it until you fail. And what an awful way to end a workout is by failure. And as soon as you give up, 1 second later, you're regretting it, saying, oh, I could have kept on going. It's just, hope I never have to do that again. Anyway, so, if anybody wanted me to participate in some sort of a study, it would be fascinating. But because, who knows? I mean, you're right. The research is pretty much all over the map. They can't agree on electrolytes. I can show you a lot of studies where people say, oh, it works. But I think most of those are funded by electrolyte companies. I'm not a lone wolf in the wilderness on a lot of these issues. A lot of people, agree with me, or they'll say, "Oh, I'm glad to hear there's somebody else that feels that way." So yeah, find out what works for you.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that would be great to see some studies around this. Yeah, have you heard of Wim Hof? Have you heard of this guy called Wim Hof?
Wim Hof? Not sure.
Okay, so he's a Dutch guy, and he's a guy who has figured to survive in extremely cold temperatures. Like he
Oh
would
yeah,
go,
yeah,
right? He
yeah,
would go
yeah. I've heard
meditate.
of that.
Yeah, so he'd go meditate in sub-zero temperatures without without no shirt, anything. He would go jump into freezing water and survive that. And he's learned how to keep his core body temperature through breathing, and he now teaches that to other people. Now conventional wisdom, if you think about it, you wouldn't do that, right? You wouldn't go jump into cold freezing water. I don't think you'll survive. Most people won't survive, but this guy, for some reason, is able to do it, and he's kind of teaching that as a method now to people. So yeah, I mean, it's only when you have these new pioneers in something, anything, you can actually take that and say, hey, can I do that? Is there something that
Mhm.
I'm doing that we should be doing differently? Yeah. So yeah, that's fascinating. So you also, I also found it interesting that you also publish your race schedule on your website ahead of schedule for the whole year. So your entire schedule is on it for folks who are interested to go check it out, which I find very fascinating. It almost puts you accountable to everybody, right? It's like, now I've put it out there, now I got to do it because it's in public domain.
Mhm.
So what triggered that thought for you? How did it come about?
Well, for starters, this website was put together by my daughter as a birthday present or something one day, and and she tasked me with doing this. So I could say I'm doing this because my daughter told me to. But it's fun to kind of map out the year and have it in one place where, uh, as you say, besides just writing down the date and the race, I'll start out the year with a whole bunch of races where I say what my expectations are and or maybe what have happened in the past at that race. And now that we're in May, the page for 2021 now has results for the ones I've done, and looking forward to the ones I haven't. I just finished 2 races in the last 3 days. I haven't updated those yet. I'll probably quick do that right after I hang up with you, and so that'll be okay. But yeah, maybe there is something a little more to it than my daughter told me to. I like seeing what my expectations for the year are. So
Yeah, absolutely. One is that, right? One is to have the expectation for oneself and keep it in a private lock and key, and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. The other is to put it out there and for everybody to see. And I think there's merit there, not because somebody wise had once told me, look, if you have a commitment and if it's in your mind, it's not a commitment. It's just hope. When you put it out there, when you put it amongst your friends, it needn't be public. Of course, in your case, you put it in public, but it could be your close friends. If you go tell them, hey, I'm going to do this year, somewhere you have that effect of a reverse accountability. Your friends are going to call and say, hey, you said you'll do it. What happened? And it kind of gets you back on track, even if you struggle with motivation or things like that, which most people struggle with. Motivation is the biggest thing that people deal with, right? So I think there's some goal there as well in terms of a best practice that you are that you're doing that is worth emulating.
I just thought of one more contrarian thing I think I just mentioned because I found a new aspect for it at the Cocodona 250 race a couple of weeks ago. It's about hydration. Basically, I think runners drink too much. Whereas the conventional wisdom is drink, 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 80 glasses a day. I'm lucky if I drink 1 glass a day. I am constantly a little bit on the dehydrated side. And this becomes especially important in a marathon. I mean, what's the advice newbies get? Oh, make sure you've got a lot, you drink a lot before the race. Look, I mean, there's an aid station every 2 miles. Nobody ever died of thirst during a marathon. And you can tell the people who listen to that advice because the gun goes off and half the field goes out into the weeds because, they got all this water in them and it's just silly. And I train to run a bit on the dehydrated side. So it doesn't bother me at all to be a little short on water. Now, at the race 3 weeks ago, we had a 22-mile segment through the Sonora Desert in the middle of the day with a huge elevation climb, 90-some degrees, and people were dropping like flies. They were told to bring a lot of water, and most people did. A lot of people had even way more water than I did. But, it was just no problem for me. I rationed it out and, I did fine. But other people have trained their bodies to need a lot of water. And if that's the way you want, if you want your body to need a lot of water, then drink a lot of water. If you want to train your body not to need that much water, then train a little bit on the dehydrated side. And I've never heard anybody else say that that's a good idea, but no, works for me.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And is that something like for example, I live in Houston, Texas, humid. Mm-hmm. You don't need to do much to sweat, lose fluids. So would you kind of calibrate that depending on which part of the world you are running, or is it like how would you do that?
Well, I always carry water on runs. Doesn't mean I always drink it. I just, drink when I'm a little bit thirsty. And I think a lot of people drink, when they're not thirsty because they've been told to. And
right. Okay.
But yeah, your body can do just fine with a modest amount of water.
Yeah, makes sense. I think I've heard about this, and I can't remember. There was an expert or a scientist or someone who's an expert in this domain who actually made this comment that drinking water when you're thirsty is a fine practice. You don't have to preempt thirst and keep drinking ahead of time. So there's a lot of these confusing methodologies and theories out there, and seems like just drinking when you have the thirst, a feeling of thirst is working for you. That's what I'm hearing. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just enough is what you should do. Strive for.
Yeah, makes sense. Terrific. So, hey, Gene, that was amazing. We are rooting for you. We hope you crack the world record either in London this year or whichever is earliest from your fitness point of view. But hopefully,
if good wishes are helpful, I should say that I expect to end this record drought in 2 weeks. I'm going for the 50K world record.
All right.
And this time, since it's the national championship race, the course is certified, the race is sanctioned, and there'll be no doubt if I set the record that it'll be ratified. So in 2 weeks in Long Island, I'll be going after the 50K road record, and I'll appreciate anybody's good wishes on that.
Absolutely. Rooting for you for that. Absolutely. All right. Coming to the last part of our conversation here, Gene, which is I have a bunch of fun questions and which I ask my guests. You ready for that?
I guess so. Trick questions. Uh-oh.
No, they're not trick. They're just fun questions about your running journey and your likes and dislikes kind of stuff. So no trick questions. I do not intend to put any guest of mine into trouble. So no trick questions.
I get myself in trouble all by myself. So don't need any help from you.
Okay, so the first question for you is, what's the most difficult part of being unusual?
The most difficult part of being unusual, I guess, it's difficult when you don't recognize that it's possible for everybody else to be wrong and you're right, and that and that everybody is different. So unusual is just a matter of perspective. I mean, it's guaranteed that anybody usual person is unusual somehow, and you should notice if you're unhappy with something unusual, you have to try and recognize that you need a little more self-confidence, and maybe you should see yourself as a leader and instead of trying to be a follower. So I guess that's what I did.
Well said. Well said. Great answer. Oh, that's a great answer. All right. Are you a teetotaler, by the way? I have a question.
I am not, but I don't drink beer.
Okay. So my question about that was, what's your favorite spirit?
Oh, well, my wife has me pretty well convinced that Cabernet Sauvignon is the drink of choice. But I enjoy good mixed bourbon drinks and like that. I also don't like coffee. It kind of makes me a social pariah some places. I don't drink beer. I don't drink coffee. Some places that's the only beverages. Maybe that's how I got dehydrated.
All right. So Cabernet Sauvignon is your favorite. And any favorite bourbons?
No.
Okay. What's your favorite junk food?
My favorite junk food. Boy, I can eat junk food with the best of them. So there's probably quite a few contenders. I know. I love Doritos. Are wheat thins junk food? Boy, I love those. I have to stop eating them because I don't know. That's the one food that can really make me gain weight for some reason. Love ice cream. Yeah. Reese's peanut butter cups. Those are great. Yeah.
All right.
Ice cream sandwiches. Oh, you just, the list goes on and on.
Pick a favorite.
No, they're all, I'm not going to tell you my favorite daughter. I'm not going to tell you my favorite junk food.
All right. We'll grant you that. Okay. You said you love cooking, or what's a favorite dish that you love to cook?
Oh, yeah, I've got, several good ones. I guess my favorite is scallops with brown butter and capers. Yeah, nice. Seared dry scallops. Boy, try to have them every 2 or 3 weeks, and it's always a treat every time. It's one of those things that just never gets old.
Yeah, that sounds good. But
I've got a brisket in the sous vide. It's been going for 48 hours now. I have high hopes for it. We'll see how that goes.
All right, nice. The last one, which is a favorite question I have for all people, all my guests that are on the show, is: if a movie were made of you, what genre would it be, and who would you like to play you?
Oh, let's see. What genre? I guess, I don't know. I guess science fiction is my best escapist. That's generally what I read. There are some really bad sci-fi movies out there, so I try and only see the good ones. But I always enjoy them as, easily enjoy. But I'll enjoy a good movie in any genre. As for who plays me, I don't know. Gee, some of you just the other day was saying, you look just like, X. And, I've got an out. I'm 73. I don't remember actors' names anymore. So there might be somebody out there, but I can't remember his name.
Okay. We'll just then say you play you or something like that.
No, we don't want that.
Okay. All right.
It's just like you got to hire a coach if you want to get better. If you want to be portrayed better, you got to hire an actor.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay. So science fiction it is, because yes, then that makes perfect sense. The man who is getting better with age. This science fiction about it.
Hmm.
So that might be just the title of the movie as well. Yeah. Yeah. I wish we
Well,
could.
it's science fiction gives me a whole bunch of new worlds to do trail runs in. So,
Yeah. 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 It must be your wife. Say hello to her.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's
That's
gone.
fine. She's gone. Okay. All right. Gene, that was a wonderful conversation. Thank you for sharing yourself and your journey with us. There's a whole lot of so much gold in your thought process. Hopefully, the viewers are taking back something that they can try. For sure, the mindset. For sure, no matter what method you use, no matter what principles you adopt, but none of that works without the right mindset. So your mindset about pushing limits and continuing to grow is very inspiring. So thanks for sharing that.
And I'm always, as you can see, I love to talk about running. I love to respond to questions. So if somebody has a pressing question, just go to ultrageezer.com and you'll find a place to leave it.
Yep. And I'll share the link on the show notes. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, they can do that as well. So we're kind of coming to the end of this conversation, Gene. I'd like to give you the last word. Is there any message you want to give as a wrap-up comment to the viewers?
I never get tired of saying it, but training can make you raise your level, but you want to try and find that limit. But it's not important to set records or beat people. It's important to be better than that person in the mirror. And that's the person you were yesterday or the month before. And there's just running gives you so many ways to try and push the envelope. You can run faster, you can run further, you can run more often. And the most interesting way is to do something more interesting with running. Travel, run a race in some place you've always wanted to visit. And but every year, don't just sign up for a race on a whim. Look a year ahead and get a destination race, or set a few things. Just something that says, okay, when I do this, I'll be a better runner than I was, the last time. And it's amazing. And that's how it worked for me, really. I mean, I got here by just trying to do a little more each year. A 50K used to be a lifetime achievement. Now they're not even worth mentioning. I mean, it's just amazing how the impossible can become possible and the possible become routine just by slowly stretching yourself.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. All right. I'm going to let you go and have the rest, a wonderful rest of the day. And, all our wishes are with you to go out and continue to break those records. And so wish you all the best, and we'll keep an eye on the news to see what's going on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. Great interview.
Thank you.